Jeff, ready?
Yep, let's do it.
Nick, ready? Yeah, let's go, guys.
Yeah, let's
Okay.
go.
Oh, okay, guys. Yeah, cool, guys. All right, let's do it.
Freshly picked and ready for consumption. Here comes another round of the Radishcast.
Another Radishcast coming in for you. I'm your fearless commissioner and guy who didn't feel like podcasting last week, Mike Fisher. Along with it, just like every time, my co-host Nick Spillstole and Jeff's suddenly scary team, Gregory. Let's turn some rumors into facts.
Yeah, you weren't the only one though, Mike. I know Nick and I didn't really put up too much of a fight last week, but we were talking about it. We all jumped on to take a week off. But excited to be back this week and getting back into the recording.
Yep, yeah, it was just a stressful week of work, and it was like every night was kind of like, oh, like I guess we could do it. And so you guys actually told me last year, you're like, if you don't feel like doing it, like you don't have to do this. Like there's no reason we have to record this. This is supposed to be fun. So I'm like, yeah, that's a good point. Screw it, we're taking a week off.
Yeah.
So I'm actually surprised I didn't get any backlash from anybody. Nobody missing their fix. But no, that'll happen. Oh, rolling into this week. Yeah, dude, suddenly scary team is not a joke, Jeff. Like it's 3 weeks in a row as a top 3 scorer. I think Joe pointed out. Like the Jugs are
It's all because of Ramsey, man.
Jugs
He's helping out the Jugs.
It's
The
true.
only thing that changed.
Jugs are coming out hot all of a sudden. Josh Jacobs is like, oh, I got to play for that dad.
Baby Daddy Jacobs.
But looking at our money winners, so from 2 weeks ago, since we didn't record last week, we have the least starting points for guess who, Monroe. Gets 10 extra fab next year. Congrats. And then big storyline, like we're saying, Jeff, going off and got the highest margin of victory last week. Your first money win in 2 years. It's big time.
I think John was the one that was kind of ripping on me a little bit there. So finally get off the edge and get my first win.
All uphill from here or downhill? What's it? One of those is, I think downhill is supposed to be like that things are getting easier because you're like going downhill. But downhill seems like bad. I don't know. One's good, one's bad. It's the good one. We're going to switch it up a little bit here. I have an interesting first segment to take a look at here.
Jeff's worst coach of the week.
So, we didn't really have any worst coach of the week in week 7 here. So, for a little bit of fun, we're going to throw it back to week 6, and we're going to double down on Cobra Kai getting Jeff's worst coach of the week. He is the first coach in league history to be the worst coach, but still get a win. And he was very, very lucky. So, Mike, I don't know if you want to jump in on anything here with this being a newer segment that we threw in first, but I think it's fitting for Cobra Kai to take this one.
Yeah, we went through all the effort. Like we were planning on podcasting last week, so we made the show doc. We put all our picks in. Everything was done and ready to go. So Cobra was already decided as the worst coach of the week last week because the Jalen Hurts touchdown with like 4 minutes left in the game was the only thing that saved him. The last play, had it been a Miles Sanders rushing touchdown, he loses. Anything like that, they don't score. Barely squeaks out that win. So, probably fitting that our first winning worst coach of the week ever. You shouldn't come close to losing to Monroe this year. I mean, Ben beat him by more, and he was missing like 4 or 5 starters.
Yep, pretty easily. So sorry, Stink.
Unfortunate. Not an honor you want to have. But with that out of the way, let's hop into week 7.
This here's the Radish Recap.
Radish recap. We got Cobra Kai and Coach Kyle Stankowski taking on Old Man Joe and Coach Joe Thomas. Old Man Joe was a 4-point favorite in this one. Took the win 118-67. All of us had this going in. We all had Old Man taking the win. I think a couple of the show docs even said like Old Man Joe by a mile. So Jeff, I'll toss it over to you first to take a look at Joe's side of the ball here. Really a good week for him and some good performances.
Yeah, I mean, you look at starts right at the top there with Joe Burrow putting up almost 40 points, and then Kenneth Walker too coming in with 2 touchdowns and 168 yards. I mean, he looked really good. Had I think a long one in there about 74 or something like that, if I remember off the top of my head. But it was he looked impressive. So that's some good upside that Joe's got coming in here in the middle of the year. So. Outside of that, a couple, Amon St. Brown got pulled early. Drake London didn't do too good. Ayuk has been surprising these last couple weeks, so we'll see if he continues to get some consideration and running that play. And then, George Pickens, 6 for 6, 61 yards and a touchdown. That's a pretty good week coming from a rookie. So some encouraging things that you'll like for Old Man Joe. It's a really good, solid week, 118 points. Didn't need all that going against Cobra Kai, but looks good.
Yeah. Ken Walker is looking fantastic. I mean, doesn't even get a target, but the 168 yards and 2 touchdowns, that's a heck of a stat line. So I think he busted off a 70-yard touchdown run. Just, having that explosive ability is insane. And, kind of like a Nick Chubb type stat line, right? Maybe if the touchdowns stop coming, you get a little disappointed, but 3 games so far where he's been, since the game Penny got hurt, where he's been a mostly full-time starter and then full-time the next 2 where he's done nothing but show out. So you got to be happy with him if you're Joe. Looking over at Kyle's side, right, it's his game without Jalen Hurts. That hurts him a lot. That's a big advantage he usually has at quarterback. And Tannehill got hurt and got pulled early. So, that's not doing him any favors. James Robinson was fully phased out. Looks like now he's traded over and he's on the Jets, so maybe that will change his fortunes a little bit. Clearly, the Jaguars weren't going to use him too much anymore.
Yep.
Pearson Olave, great rookie finds by Kyle. I know he had quite a few throws in that draft. Those 2 are definitely looking like they're working out for him, but the rest of it is pretty uninspiring. So, Cobra Kai drops to 3-4. Old Man Joe bumps up to 4-3. So, definitely an interesting matchup there. 3-4 is our last playoff team right now, and so Joe bumps into the playoffs securely for now. Moving on to our next matchup, we got the SCLSU Mud Dogs and coaches Troy Hecht and Joe Harper taking on the Ashwaubenon Righties and Coach Tony Fisher. Righties are a 16-point favorite in this one. I thought the Mud Dogs had a chance to cover here, but they did not. 116-88. Righties take the win here. You and Nick both had that one right. Jeff, I'll toss it over to you to talk through this one a little bit.
Yeah, and Mike, really for the longest time, Tony wasn't in the greatest spot, so that was looking like it was going to be a solid play and a solid pick. But then Tony's team, like they usually do, turn it on, and Eckler got 30 points, and Juju with a long touchdown there, just under 22 points. And just pretty solid all-around performances. I guess the big thing to note is Mark Andrews had 1 carry for 4 yards and 0 catches. That was surprising. You don't normally see that coming from that animal and beast. So, but goes to show how explosive Tony's team is, putting up 116 points and arguably one of, well, it's hard to say, but his best tight end and one of the most consistent people on his team putting up less than 1 point. So just shows how scary his team is. But yeah, had faith in the righties, and they rewarded Nick and I.
Yeah, absolutely. And Juju having a really solid game. Every single Chiefs wide receiver had a really good game in this one. So that was another big thing, right? That's probably been Tony's biggest weakness so far is he's got Jefferson and he's got Waddle, but just having somebody step up behind those guys. So if Juju can kind of cement his place as Tony's wide receiver 3, that'll probably be big for him going forward. But moving over onto Troy's side, I mean, Patrick Mahomes is insane right now. like I just said, 3 different Chiefs receivers all had great games. I think Travis Kelce had a fine game. Didn't get the touchdowns, but still was fine out there. So to be able to support all those guys, Joe Mixon, solid day. Outside of that, right? It's Jerry Jeudy had some nice reception numbers, but that offense just wasn't moving. It hasn't been all year, so you're just not seeing the upside from him. Some trade rumors surrounding him. Not sure if that's legitimate or not. Kyle Pitts apparently teams are calling about him at least. So
interesting.
Kyle Pitts got a 1 yard, should have been touchdown, but they didn't end up calling it. So he, is looking terrible again at just over 2 points. He's got to be the biggest disappointment for Troy's team here for most of the year, right? Had huge expectations. I had huge expectations for what he would be. Just disappointing what he's cropped up to be here. So maybe better days ahead there, but not a whole lot else to talk about.
Yeah.
Moving on to our next matchup, we got Benny and the Jets and Coach Ben Stelzer taking on I Am Left-Handed and Coach Kyle Monroe. Jets are a 33-point favorite in this one, and it's weird, right? I would have never thought that in a game between Ben and Kyle here that all 3 of us would be picking Kyle to cover it, and then he would actually cover it. But that's what happened, 80-68. Benny and the Jets take the win. Really this came down to this is not an indicative game, right? Ben missing Delvin Cook, missing Stephon Diggs, missing Cooper Kupp. Am I missing somebody? Was there somebody else that was
James Conner?
James Conner's hurt.
Injury.
So it's, a shell of a lineup that Ben's throwing out there. So from Ben's perspective, right, it was probably scary when it was happening. You have the chance to lose, but getting through this game with a win and now getting most of your major bye weeks out of the way is enormous. So he's got to be thrilled about this. Tyler Lockett, I was expecting when DK Metcalf went down somewhat early that Lockett would kind of maybe step up a little bit, but only 45 yards, not a whole lot happening for him. Aaron Rodgers has been disappointing, man. I tell you, it's you expected at least a couple, mid 20-point games from him on the year, but he's just not doing it, and it doesn't look like that offense is really doing much to figure it out. Devontae Adams too. I'm gonna pull up his stats real quick just out of curiosity. So he's had the 2 huge games, sitting at 25 points. And I guess he's been solid for the rest, 13, 15, 11 points, but just not what you saw last year when he was in Green Bay. And I don't know that anybody expected it to be what you saw last year, but yeah, just definitely down from what you're used to seeing. Toss it over to you for lefty side of the ball.
Yeah, Monroe getting, there was reports that Pacheco was going to be the starting running back there. So you got 8 carries, 43 yards, or at least more opportunities, I should say, with splitting with Clyde. But so that was a nice play for him that he normally doesn't have that luxury of like a starting running back to throw in there. And then Zay Jones, Matt Hollins has been kind of a nice surprise. I mean, you look at his stat lines as far as like snap percentages, the lowest he's been in there is 87%. So he's getting the options, he's getting the targets, or chances, I should say. He doesn't get a bunch of targets, but a pleasant surprise there. And overall, just kind of did enough to stay inside that line. But 68, I'm not sure if that's probably one of the highest points he's scored on a weekly outing. So there's just not much more he can really do there. There's not much. He had a lot of, what did you say earlier, Mike? He had the most points, or the least. He was the least efficient coach. Was that what it was?
Oh yeah, he was pretty low in efficiency. He had chances to win this game, right? He had like his max points were like 100 and some for the week, which is one of the best it's been for him for the season.
Yeah. But those plays like we were looking at was with Godwin and Ray McLeod. So some of those are guys that he would never play or never put in there. But he had the opportunities had he picked right. But that's all you can really hope for.
And if DK Metcalf is hurt for a couple weeks, Marquise Goodwin all of a sudden becomes a player. Maybe he can throw in a lineup reliably. So, yeah, it'd be interesting, right? This is the 1 week where A manager we're about to talk to about next actually did score less points. This is the first time he hasn't scored the lowest points on the week, I think. Maybe Kyle did it. Stankowski did it another time. But our next matchup is the Taint Ticklers and Coach Nick Stoll taking on Archduke Fish and Coach Mike Fisher. Dukes came into this one as a 16-point favorite, took the win 110-68. Not a lot of doubt here. Nick had the kind of painful situation of what do you do with Keenan Allen, right? Can you play him? And he doesn't play the full allotment of snaps, which hurts him. Chris Godwin, that Bucs offense, man, I don't know what the heck's going on. And obviously I felt it with Tom Brady, but Chris Godwin, just a bad game because of it. Michael Pittman, Alec Pierce, the Colts offense too, just not anything to be excited about. Maybe the change in quarterback now that they're benching Matt Ryan will be the difference for him here. But definitely a rough week for Nick here. I guess if you're Nick, you want to put up low points in a game you maybe were expected to lose anyway. You hate to do this against a team where you're needing the win for a tiebreaker later in the season. So there's some solace in that. But toss it over to you, Jeff, for my side of the ball.
Yeah, Mike, I'm scrolling through these points, a lot of just consistent mid-teens outing. Everyone on your team got, besides Amari Cooper, even McCaffrey, most of those guys I was going to say got double digits and just right in that teens, but no one really did horrible for you, but no one really popped either. I guess it's good to see Kittle getting in there finally for a touchdown, just under 100 yards, finished with 18.8 points. So you gotta like that coming from your tight end spot, and with just the potential of your running back room and your wide receivers, so to speak, too. So you didn't need much with Nick putting up the lowest points and this week, but nothing. Hopefully that Tom Brady and Evans can come around. I know this could have been a lot worse had Evans caught that deep bomb early in the game that he dropped. That both of those guys would have had additional points on there and it would have looked a little bit worse here, but I think better days are ahead for both of those guys. Same with Godwin too.
Nick did not have the lowest points on the week. Stankowski did, but both were below Kyle Monroe. Monroe would have beat either of them this week. So Christian McCaffrey only played 28% of snaps after being playing 2 days after he was traded for, so improvements to come there, I'm sure. So I'm happy putting up 110 with that situation. And like you said, the Mike Evans bomb touchdown. T. Higgins had a touchdown that got called or could have gotten called if they would have challenged it, but they chose not to. So definitely happy with my team's performance this week. Moving on to our next matchup, we got Ball is Life and Coach John Lamers taking on Grizzly Adams and Coach Alex Cooley. Ball came into this one as a 12-point favorite. Nick and I picked the champ, and it was the wrong choice. Jeff gets this one right with Ball winning 124-73. Jeff, I'm going to toss it over to you. What gave you so much faith in Ball is Life in this one, and talk through it a little bit.
I really actually like that Hopkins play with Marquise Brown being out. I thought that was a good play to throw him in there. I wasn't expecting that to be that high of a score, 42-34 against, a pretty good Saints defense. But Hopkins was peppered with targets. He had 14 targets, 10 receptions. And really what did it for me was I was just banking on one of these Jamar Chase's games and going against Atlanta. It just happened to work out. He put up 29 points, and it's tough to really vote against Derrick Henry whenever he's out there. So I just thought there was enough here. I didn't love the Algier play, and I didn't love the Pollard play on Cooley's side. And on top of that, with Corey Davis being kind of the second option last week in that receiving Jets team. But there was just enough uncertainty on Cooley's side of the ball that made me want to pivot over to Ball is Life, and he popped off. I mean, almost 125 points. That's a damn good week.
Yeah, and right, this was just a low-scoring week all around, it feels like. So a couple teams, we had 3 teams in the 68-point range. Cooley here at 73 points. Just a lot of down weeks for guys. And, you brought up Mac Hollins' snap share at 89% earlier. Hunter Renfro's is only 57%. Mac Hollins getting all the work in 2 wide receiver sets. That's kind of making Renfro to be more situational, and that's with Waller not playing in the game. So Definitely a little disappointing there. Not sure how much you can really rely on Hunter Renfroe anymore. Maybe he's slow coming back from that concussion. His snap shares were higher at the start of the year, but definitely hoping you see more out of him if you're Cooley. And then Deontay Johnson, 10 targets, but only 5 catches for 42 yards. We talked about George Pickens having a pretty solid week on only 6 targets. Deontay just can't seem to fully put it together. So definitely the biggest storyline of this is, though, Lamar Jackson, 10 points. That just doesn't happen very often. 4 down games in a row after just a nuclear start. So really definitely somebody that I want to watch moving forward. He feels like a guy you can't hold down for long. So I'm expecting bounce backs out of him moving forward here. But all in all, a huge win for John, an important win for him. 2-5, only has him 1 game out of playoffs, which is crazy to say, but still wide open. He could still make the push if he wants to, or he could turn it around and go the other way. And maybe we'll talk about his trade a little bit more in the next segment, but definitely something that's going to be interesting.
Yep, absolutely.
Moving on to our last matchup, we got a little JJ Humpy and Madumpy, and Coach Jordan Chartier taking on Jay's Juggernauts and Coach Jeff Gregory. JJ Humps was a 15-point favorite in this one. I thought he had something going, but alas, I was wrong. Jeff taking the win 148-90. Just a slaughtering for you, Jeff. And so that you don't have to brag about yourself too much, I'll go ahead and take your side of the ball. Tua coming back, he had a fine day for you. But really the thing is, Josh Jacobs, just insanity lately. And I did not see this coming. I don't know many people that did see it coming. But he's just taken over everything, and it's working for him. He's just absolutely going nuclear right now. Ramondre Stevenson in your flex, another running back going off. And I'd probably be talking about Breece Hall a lot more if he didn't get hurt after 4 carries, right? He had the 60-some yard touchdown run. Had a solid day for you despite, getting hurt pretty early on. So that's got to be a little disappointing. You were looking like you were really going to be rolling out 3 stud running backs every week. But maybe Travis Etienne can step in there and still have you feeling good about those guys. Wide receivers were solid. McLaurin, Curtis, Samuel, Christian Kirk, all solid weeks. And then Evan Ingram in the revenge game against the Giants did enough for you. So I'll toss it over to you for JJ Humpy's side of the ball.
Yeah, when I was looking at this, I was like, okay, of course, Dak's finally back. He's going against, the Lions, who don't have a good defense. I was like, he's just going to keep going off. And he tried. He did pretty good. He had 25 attempts, 19 completions. Just really didn't have those long touchdowns and anything like that. He threw one real late. I think it was less than 2 minutes left. He finally got in the end zone. And same with Zeke. Zeke got a nice garbage time touchdown at the end there. But what I was really concerned with was going to be Tyreek Hill in that game against the Steelers. And, he really didn't do the most there. He had a 13 targets, 7 receptions, just under 11 points, and got to be kind of disappointed in what you saw to Leonard Fournette with only getting under 4 points, and Lazard going out with an injury. So I think it was just kind of Sutton too having a bad week, just kind of a bad overall performance out of the Humpies. Aaron Jones looked good. He was a lot more involved. Hopefully the Packers can keep that up, keep utilizing and getting in the end zone twice is definitely a solid for him. But no, I mean, my team put it together finally, all together on 1 week here, and pretty happy with the performance, obviously.
Yeah, and Leonard Fournette in a game when, that whole Tampa Bay offense was just down. I'm surprised to not see him. He's had a lot of targets the last couple weeks, to not really have all that much this week. Only 3 targets in a game where they were trailing almost the whole time. But yeah, like you said, definitely some points. Sutton, definitely something to be concerned about. Lazard got hurt at the end of that game. Not going to be able to rely on him. Tyreek Hill, we're talking about 11 points being a down game for him. He's going to come back in a big way, obviously. But yeah, it wouldn't have really mattered what he did, Geff, because 150 points by you that's a hell of an outing. That's not something that happens all that often in the league. So Definitely a big
Definitely
one.
not on my team, that's for sure.
All right, so Jeff, a 6-0 week of picks here. Got all 6 right. Too bad we didn't have it on the show, so everybody thinks we're just lying or something. But
Yeah, weird.
Jeff 6-0. Nick was 5-1. I was mediocre 3-3, which is just burying me. Both of you guys at 22-8 on the year, and I'm just meandering along at 17-13. So, yeah, you guys are battling this out. There's still time. There's still a lot of time. Once those double ups start rolling, baby. But all right, with that out of the way, let's hop into the next one.
Dive on into the Husky League matchups.
Husky League matchups. We got Ball is Life at 2-5, taking on Old Man Joe at 4-3. Old Man Joe's a 4-point favorite in this one right now. I'm gonna start talking through this a little bit because I don't know who I'm picking in this one. Jeff, I know you don't either. We're gonna kind of figure this out on the fly here. But yeah, Joe Burrow's been playing unreal, and going against Cleveland, I think, on Monday night, I got to think that he's going to keep rolling. They're going to keep letting him throw the ball as much as they have been. He's been throwing it just a ton lately, 42, 37, 35 attempts. They've just been letting him do it a lot more than sometimes they had in the past. They've been relying on Joe Mixon other times, but it just seems like they're really letting him unload. And so that's nothing but good for Joe's team here, especially when you're going up against, maybe Matt Stafford, maybe Davis Mills. I don't know if you could start Davis Mills. I think you got to start Stafford, but yeah, that's a big advantage for Joe here. We talked about Ken Walker and how well he's doing, and having Miles Sanders and A.J. Brown back from bye is going to be big for the team. Definitely a lot of stuff to like on Joe's side of the ball, and probably one of the most interesting things on the other side is the fact that, we're looking at a lineup with Derrick Henry and DeAndre Hopkins, but they're not going to be there for very long with him, trade-in process to send both of them away for Stephon Diggs. I think that's going to hurt John's lineup in the short term, but could be big for him in the long term. So all that said, I think I got to go with Old Man Joe here to take that 4-point spread home. Jeff, toss it over to you.
Yeah, and the other thing too is with DK getting hurt there, he's going to be gone a couple weeks, so not having him in your lineup too, being John, is going to be, you're going to be relying on Tyler Boyd, who actually had a pretty good, everyone on that Cincinnati Bengals wide receiver team had a good week. So, yeah. He's got to roll with him. He's going to have probably Henderson slide up there in the Henry spot and then figure out a flex play. So it's going to be interesting what that looks like. I mean, luxury is he gets Stephon Diggs to throw in your lineup, who's the number one wide receiver. So, you're going to get some firepower there. But, when you were going through those matchups, Mike, the two that stood out to me was Sanders and Brown coming back against the Steelers. I think coming off by the Eagles, they're going to want to continue to stay unbeaten and keep working through that. And the way Burrow's been playing, it's going to be hard to choose against him in a Monday night matchup against a Browns team. So I'm also going to go Old Man Joe on this matchup here. I think 4 points is the line. I think it's going to be close. I think John's got some opportunities, but trading away Henry and Hopkins and really only getting Diggs to come back, it's a 2-for-1 for this week. I think that was enough to sway me over to Old Man Joe there.
Yeah, and a huge game. This is the Dad Bowl, so I'm wondering if we're going to see any the original Dad Bowl. Now there's a lot of dads, so it's tough to keep track. But the original Dad Bowl, usually there's a side bet associated with it. Not sure if we'll see that this week or not. But a huge game for John, especially because if he's able to pull out a win here and pull to 3-5, he has Monroe next week. He'd be able to get to just under 500, with a couple wins in a row here. So this could really be a defining, kind of game for John here. Really curious to see how it plays out. But moving on to our next matchup, we got the SCLSU Mud Dogs at 2-5 taking on Benny and the Jets at 5-2. Benny, a 25-point favorite in this one. Jeff, I'm gonna toss it over to you to make your pick first. What you got?
Ooh, Mahomes on bye for Troy, and then Harris really struggling last week. I don't know if he's gonna be they seem to be splitting carries, but Stevenson's getting all the third down work too. And then Bateman, I saw a report Bateman being kind of banged up, missed a practice today. That's a Thursday night game going against the Bucs. Is he going to be out there? I guess I don't really know. So I think I'm going to go. What was the line you said, Mike? You said it was 25 points. I'm going to go with Ben. I like right now he's got Daniel Jones in there. And with Cooper Kupp, Adams, potentially Hopkins, Derrick Henry, Delvin Cook, you got Ken Lockett in there with Metcalf out. I mean, he's got a pretty dangerous lineup that he's throwing out there with a lot of high potential in there. So yeah, I think there's enough here to go Benny, and with Mahomes being out, I think that kind of sealed it for me.
Yeah, I got to go Benny as well. So having obviously all his firepower back, he's going to have Henry sliding into this lineup and Hopkins sliding into this lineup. So that pushes Tyler Lockett out of having to start even.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is gonna be a big win, I think. You mentioned Damian Harris struggling. I think part of that was coming back from a hamstring injury, not wanting to force him into too much. But all in all, Romeo Doubs, Kyle Pitts, having to start those guys, they're just not doing well, and I don't know that you can rely on Kyle Pitts turning it around, and Romeo Doubs had a couple drops last week. That's going to hurt, a veteran quarterback's confidence in you. So, yeah, I think Benny with his full allotment of players back. You mentioned Daniel Jones. The Seattle matchup's a good one for him, and I think that's the right play here.
He's been running the ball like crazy too. It's been pretty impressive, him just taking off.
Daniel Jones has more rushing yards this year than Najee Harris does. How awesome is that? Not awesome if you're John, I guess, but
yeah.
So yeah, I got to take Benny and the Jets in this one. So that's a clean sweep. Nick also has Benny in this one, so not a whole lot of dissension coming through in these first two games. But moving on to our next matchup, we got the Taint Ticklers at 2-5 taking on I Am Left-Handed at 0-7. Taints are a 35-point favorite in this one. I'm gonna go ahead and jump on this right away. I'm gonna take the Taints. It's a get right game, and I think they do get right. Two guys that Monroe's been playing all year is Jerick McKinnon and Isaiah Pacheco, and not that those are good plays necessarily, but they're better than the plays he's gonna have to make.
Yeah.
So he's his team is just rough as ever. Greg Dulcich is coming out though. That's actually a potentially solid play at tight end. Matt Collins, Zay Jones we talked about, and Kyler Murray obviously at quarterback, but I really just don't think those guys are enough. I think on Nick's side of the ball, Geno against the Giants, he's been good most of the year. A little bit of a down week last week, but I think that's a blip on the radar, right? That happens when you have a guy bust off a 75-yard run that just ends a drive with points, and then you're up and you're running it. So Kamara against Las Vegas, I really like that matchup. And Pittman, I heard it said on a podcast today, Matt Ryan was getting the ball out so quickly that maybe now if you get a little more mobile quarterback in there and Sam Ehlinger, where he can create time and actually throw the ball downfield, maybe that's really beneficial for Michael Pittman here. So, and Chris Godwin, I gotta think that eventually I need the Tampa Bay offense to figure it out. So I gotta think that happens sooner or later. And Chris Godwin's going to be a main beneficiary of that. So toss it over to you, Jeff. What you got in this one?
Oh, I've picked Monroe 2 weeks in a row and it's paid off, but I can't go a third. I'm gonna go with the Taints again, or Taints this week. And mostly it's because of that running back. Craig Reynolds, I think Swift is going to be back. Zacchaeus has actually been solid. I don't see that continuing. I think those have been, and I say solid because he's been putting up, 5, 7, 10 points here and there.
Solid.
Zay Jones and Matt Collins, consistent in getting points. I just don't see it this week. It's more of just a gut feel. I think Nick is, like you said, Mike, he's going to have a bounce back week. And I think that Robert Woods play against the Texans is going to be a sneaky good play. I think he's going to be popping off here. So yeah, I'm gonna roll with the Taints here, and what was it, 35 points? It's gonna be. I just don't see Kyle getting too many points, and I see Nick getting into the 90s, and that's really all you really need, 90, 95 to kind of put away Kyle's team, especially this week. So.
Yeah, and Nick doing his best self-deprecation. You shit on yourself, and then that'll do you good. So he picked the lefties in this one to cover the line. I don't blame him. I know he's a little down after a crappy week last week for the Taints. So it'll turn around this week, though. We're both confident in it at least. So moving on to our next matchup, we got Jay's Juggernauts at 4-3 taking on Archduke Fish at 7-0. Dukes are a 19-point favorite in this one, and since we're the only ones here, we get to make it.
Hot diggity dog! It's the game of the week.
I think it's the game of the week, and I don't even think it's necessarily because of the bias, right? Jeff, your team's been going nuts lately. 3 weeks in a row as a top 3 scorer in the league. Mm-hmm. My team's 7-0, so obviously a lot on the line here, but. This is a big game and a game that I did not expect to be worried about, but I'm very worried about it. A 19-point favorite in this one. You know what? I'm gonna start with Nick's pick. Nick has me taking this one. Has the Archduke taking this down? I'm gonna have to agree. I gotta believe in myself here. Like I said earlier, I think that. This is a game for Tampa Bay to get right against Baltimore. They've been very up and down, hot and cold as far as the defense. Hopefully we get a high-scoring Thursday night game, and I can get off to a strong start there. But outside of that, even, Saquon against Seattle and Jonathan Taylor against Washington. Washington actually did a pretty good job stopping Green Bay's running backs last week, but I don't know that Green Bay's running backs are Jonathan Taylor-level rushers. Aaron Jones was good, but a lot of that was in the pass game. And A.J. Dillon's just been bad all year. So I think John Taylor has a good chance to get back on track. He's been a little disappointing this year, but part of that's been injury. Part of it's just been underperforming. And I'm excited to see Christian McCaffrey with a full week of actual practice and what his utilization of that offense looks like. So I'm just really excited for that. So I'm gonna take myself to cover this. Jeff, I'll toss it over to you. What do you think of this one?
Yeah, I don't blame you, Mike. I'm gonna go with myself here. I don't necessarily think I'll win this week with your lineup and looking across the board, but 19 points, I'm hoping I can keep it at least close here. So I'm going to go with the Jugs. Part of that being ETN, James Robinson was just traded out, so I'm hoping he has just a monster game, just gets all the utilization. They got the early Sunday slate. I think it's in London. Is that correct? Probably. Yep. So, that'll be interesting. At least I get to watch some football early on. Jacobs, hopefully he continues to keep rolling. And then Tua against Detroit, that's a pretty good matchup. But where I'm kind of a little hesitant is my 2 Washington wide receivers going against the Colts defense, and then Kirk against Denver's defense, who, both of those have been pretty solid this year. So I don't know if there's, looking across the board, if I'm going to be able to maintain and keep up with your wide receivers, because I do think Evans and Brady are going to have a pretty good outing against a bad Ravens defense. And so we'll see. I think it'll really come down to if Stevenson can continue popping off and if Goddard can finally get in the end zone and have a decent game coming off the bye. So I don't know if there's enough to take the win necessarily, Mike, but I'm hoping I can keep it close. So I'm going with the Jugs this week.
Yeah, and a 19-point spread definitely gives you some room there. And I'm going to go ahead and highlight the player that I know you want to talk more about.
Jeff's keep on cooking.
Who wants some man meat?
I do. I want some man meat.
Yep, part of me picking myself too was I finally get to throw Josh Jacobs in there as Jeff just keep on cooking. So last 3 weeks has just been 2 30-point games and then a pretty high 20-point outing. So I'm hoping that trend continues for the 4th week in a row and, can get over that 20-point threshold and hopefully get the Jugs their 4th win in a row. So Josh Jacobs, baby, let's go.
Yep, no arguments here. I'm worried about him. Not a player I thought I'd be worried about at the start of the year, but here we are. Moving on to our next matchup, we got the Ashwaubenon righties at 7-0, taking on Grizzly Adams at 3-4. Righties are a 29-point favorite in this one. I'm gonna go ahead and step in here right away. I gotta take the righties here, and I'm not even looking at through the matchup yet to figure out like, oh, what are the matchups? Where am I going? I'm gonna go on gut feel alone and say that in a game where Cooley's missing one of his two pieces, he needs Lamar Jackson and he needs Travis Kelce having big games. That's his recipe to success. And in a week where Travis Kelce's on bye and he does not really have a tight end that's worth a whole lot to slot in there, I think he's really going to struggle. Tony's side of the ball here, Josh Allen against Green Bay, that defense has not been what it's been propped up to be to start the year. So I feel like that's got to be a good matchup at this point for Josh Allen. Justin Jefferson against Arizona, Jalen Waddle against Detroit. He's got some really nice matchups here. And, like you said, Bateman's a little banged up, so anything Lamar Jackson does get probably is going to Mark Andrews, and that's just points for Tony. So I got to go with Tony here. I think he's going to cover this line. Nick agrees with me. Jeff, where are you sitting on this one?
I'm absolutely going the righties this way too. Mostert against the Lions. The Lions defense has been horrid this year, and the running backs are running all over them. So I don't see why Mostert won't have a massive game, and Andrews too, a bounce back game from last week, being down, didn't get a catch. I think they're gonna heavily target him, get him going, and that's gonna spell good things for Tony and his squad. We'll see if he's able to play Michael Thomas or not. Is Juju? Yeah, Juju's got to be on bye. I know
he's
there
on
was
bye. Yep.
I wonder if Tony's going to throw Paris Campbell in there or not. He was talking him up and as a potential. So we'll see if he actually pulls the trigger. But I just you look over at Cooley's side of the ball. You got Lamar. That's a good play. Samuel's a good play, and we touched on it earlier. Renfro, we don't really know what he is this year yet, and Kelce being out is enough. There's just not enough there to keep up with Tony's high scoring. So this is a 29-point game, and I think it could get ugly pretty quick.
Yep, I totally agree. Just going to be really, really interesting. If I didn't even look at the Mostert play against Detroit, that's a slam dunk. I mean, Eckler on bye, that's a fantastic fill-in. He's been great lately. So, moving on to our last matchup, we got little JJ Humpy and Madumpy at 3-4, taking on Cobra Kai at 3-4. JJ Humps is a 8-point favorite in this one. Winner gets to push over up to 500, and loser is going to be in rough shape here. Nick likes JJ Humpy in this one, and I can kind of see why. The Packer matchups are tough going against Buffalo, but Tyreek Hill against Detroit and Cortland Sutton against Jacksonville, I think, have potential to really do good things for him. And then Chicago defense taking on Dak and Zeke, definitely some potential there too. Looking over at Cobra side of the ball, Jalen Hurts is a good play, but beyond that, I'm not thrilled with many of these plays. Olave and Pierce have been really good, but Tennessee's run defense is very good, so I think that they can hold Pierce in check a little bit. Olave will go off, but it'll also be interesting, like you said, if Michael Thomas is back, does that hold him down at all as far as the target totals he's been getting? So I'm taking JJ Humpy in this one. Jeff, toss it over to you.
Yeah, looking at Stank's side of the ball too, he's got Singletary, McKenzie, Knox. He's got three Bills in his lineup, and you look over at Jordan's side of the ball, and he's got Lazard, Tonyan, and Jones. So he's got 3 Packers. So really, I think this matchup is going to come down to that Green Bay Bills game, where whoever can, score more points, is going to set themselves up for a victory just in that singular game. My concern is, my question mark is if Lazard is going to play or not. It shows he's dealing with the shoulder injury that dropped him out. Looking down, who does Jordan have? Anyone that he would just naturally sub in there?
Garrett Wilson.
Yeah. so
Gabe
he's got-
Davis. Gabe Davis should actually probably be in there, especially with the question mark around it.
Yeah, so he throws Gabe in there. I'm looking at. I really wanted to go Monroe or Stank side of the ball, but I don't think I can. I think playing 2 Texans and 3 Bills, I don't think there's enough here to keep up with Jordan. I think Dak 1 week back from an injury is going to have a good game against the Bears in that dome. So I'm going to go JJ as well, and kind of complete the sweep of all 3 of us picking them.
Yeah,
We had a lot of similar picks this week.
Yeah, I was just about to say, definitely a lot of similarity. So we'll either look stupid or maybe the games are just a little more clear cut this week. So with all that out of the way, let's hop into a classic.
Ask me the questions, Bridgekeeper. I'm not afraid.
This here's Mike's. Will it happen?
All right, Mike, let me get down to it. Will Monroe get any more first-round picks before the trade deadline this year?
It will not happen.
That was Mike's. Will it happen?
All right,
Interesting.
let's close it out with a goodie.
Shut up, baby. I know it.
Shut up, baby. I know it. Absolute guarantee.
So the absolute guarantees. So I'll what'd you have?
What is Nick's? Nick, you go.
Oh, I agree.
Yeah.
Shut up, baby. I know it.
So I'm gonna kind of build off of a trade that's happening right now. So John's sending Derrick Henry and DeAndre Hopkins over for Stephon Diggs. I think it's only gonna take one of those players to make this trade bad for John. I think Derrick Henry is gonna outscore Stephon Diggs this week, and Hopkins is just icing on the cake.
Shut up, baby. I know it.
Jeff, what you got for us?
I'm going to go back to this little JJ and Cobra Kai matchup and look at the quarterbacks. I touched on Dak Prescott going against the Bears. I think Dak will have a bounce-back week and outscore Jalen Hurts this week.
Shut up, baby. I know it.
That's bold.
Mm-hmm.
I like
I'm
it.
feeling it, baby.
Feeling it. It's that new kid energy. You just got those instincts.
Take nap
All
when
right.
you can. So
Maybe it's like the lack of sleep that's just giving you like some new level of clarity. Like that's what's going on with your fantasy team. That's why you're so good right now.
it's actually funny. John texted me out of the blue after one of my trades, and he goes, "Are you a little sleep deprived right now?" And I was like, "What? You didn't like one of my trades?"
Was it the Van Jefferson trade?
It was, yeah.
So
it
it's
was that
funny.
one.
It's funny because that actually looks like a nice trade at this point, because now Ben reloading, you could argue that his pick and Tony's pick are a wash. At the time, it looked like Tony's was kind of pretty secure to be higher. It's funny. I messaged John. Me and John will message throughout the day in Slack. And I messaged him, and at the exact same time, he messaged me, and we were just like, what is Jeff doing? Because it was right after you had traded for the pick and then traded it away immediately. It was just funny.
Yeah.
But, all right, with all that, thanks for stopping in, everybody. Good luck this week. I don't even have to say unless you're playing one of us, because we're playing each other. So have a good one.
Webster's Dictionary defines radish as a swollen, pungent tasting edible root high in potassium, which can help lower blood pressure. Or more importantly, 3 guys spitting nonsense and talking about fantasy football. Add salt and pepper and chomp into another episode next time. See y'all later.
Get your rivalry week bets in, everybody. I should have complained about that more.